Good afternoon, everyone. Most of us are supply chain leaders in this conference, in this room over here. So, if I say a few good things about supply chain, I'm pretty sure nobody's going to come back and say, "What are you saying? Why are you patting yourself on the back?" So that's the comfort I have about being in this room. And of course, as supply chain leaders, we are. I think we are used to listening. As we have progressed, we have used to listening a lot more than we have been talking. Talking with suppliers, but also listening internally. And I think that art of listening is something that we have become experts in. We listen to demand signals. We listen to disruptions that are happening in the global markets. We listen to quiet warnings in the data that we have. We listen to a lot of things, right? And then when we listen to all of those things, we kind of try to see how can we improve those. We could make them simpler, process oriented, and that's where the process, the need for digitalization of supply chain starts coming into play. As part of that listening process and as part of continuous improvement, we try to make sure that we start bringing in processes that are repeatable into a digital journey, right? And all of us know over the last decade or so, a lot of digitization has happened within supply chain. Many companies have created SaaS platforms to support exclusively supply chain and procurement. So the journey has been tremendous. And in this whole journey, somewhere people start asking questions. Is this now going to start replacing humans? Are we really a contributor? Are we a bane to the whole supply chain process? And that's really what we are going to start discussing today. An important element that we also forget while doing that is when we listen, we also actually listen to humans. We listen to our stakeholders internally. We listen to our suppliers. We listen to our peers. We try to read the room. These are elements that a human continues to bring in. We do negotiations. We understand the empathy part. So I think that's where we will we see how the human edge continues to be relevant. We might adapt, as humans as we start bringing in these technologies and digitalization, and therefore I think I don't see we as humans going away. Honestly speaking, with that, I would then like to move on into the conversation right away. I do have a very eclectic panel with me. I think I'm fortunate to have a diversity on the panel, and diversity not just in terms of gender that you see over here, but also diversity in terms of industries. If I just have to read through the combined experience that we all have, it covers steel, FMCG, lubricants, textiles, automotive, med tech, consumer electronics, healthcare services, petroleum, piping infrastructure. I mean, there's really a lot of experience that I think we bring in. There's also a lot of experience, not just from industry or diversity from industry. We also bring in diversity from the roles that we have played. We have played roles across direct materials, indirect materials, processes, governance, supply chain planning, logistics. We've also had projects, and we also happen to have experience from where we have worked, private industries, government PSUs. So I think I'm fortunate that I'm leading this panel. So what we will try and do is try and get into the digitalization aspect and the human element that covers all of these diverse experiences that we have had. We might bring in elements from what we have learned, but we'll try and focus on really supply chain and what it brings, to have the human continue to manage it, right? So that's with that. I think I will start off with the first question that I will. So we'll start off with understanding, the leadership buy-in towards digitalization. We'll quickly cover that. Then we'll look at how we continue to have how we have a digital-first culture, and then we'll move into the human element. So that's how we'll move ahead. So the first question I would ask Jaydeep, there on the far left. Jaydeep, leadership buy-in, how important it is in your view to not just embrace but also sustain digital adoption, within supply chain?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So it's a very important imperative question. It's the if I say this is one of the most critical thing for for digitization, as well as any specific you got talk about any big change management in organization, the leadership buy-in, and it applies to digitization too. Most importantly, if you see, the first thing is that anything which happens, any change, any massive change which takes place in an organization, there is a why behind it, and most of the cases people are illusion behind this why. People are asking that it has been told, so we need to do. Somebody will have a good idea about it, somebody half idea, somebody no idea. So the proper communication from the leadership with an ownership, it gives you a very clear why you want to do this. And when you are convinced on why you want to do this, then you will be following the steps. Because a big project, a big thing, digitalization is not a project, it's a process. It's continuous now, right? And so you have to break it into short-term and long-term goals. So they understand why they are doing this. There's a clear why behind it. What are the benefits will be coming out of it, and with the leadership clearly stating them, the adherence to this is very clear. It happens actually. Okay. Second point, in terms of leadership buy-in, a lot of investment in people, infrastructure, and technology is required as we progress into digitization at different stages. Sometimes you plan something new comes up, you have to adapt to it. But a commitment from the top, ensures that these are backed by, the leadership will back it when it is required. I mean, you cannot do a specific piece of this. When you require 3 people, you cannot manage it with 1. You need a certain amount of funding. You guys cannot say it's not there. No, those commitments need to be very firmly given by the leadership. Third, as it progresses, of course, completely transforming slowly and steadily into this journey, which we're all discovering about digitization, the change management, the resistance, basically. Resistance, that is very common. It is going to happen at every level, different levels, ground levels to the top levels. Now, this change management finally, it needs to be handled by that top leadership, and I will say it's not very sensitive, but a very clear way in terms of you define what is the benefit out of it, why you want to do this, why we are doing this, and secondly, discuss very openly. Because one thing which I have personally noticed at times, problems are not discussed very openly as it moves up towards, because of people, human ego, other things, personalities and everything. So they're sometimes discussed like halfway through, expected things will flow and some sort of a discussion. This needs to be very, very clean in these sort of cases, very, very clear. So it's to be open and honest. Now, if you break those barriers, a lot of things will move through. And fourthly, our leadership, buying in these this sort of a thing. One of the most important messages which goes out to the stakeholders inside the organization as well as outside, when you talk about customers, suppliers, and investors today, they get that reassurance from the top management that that complete focus and commitment is there for the digital journey, and the organization is ready for this sort of a journey and continue to maintain its competitive edge, because the landscape is changing very rapidly. We used to talk about landscapes changing in years. Today we are talking about landscapes changing in days and months. So I think these are the very, very key points for a leadership buy-in in terms of this entire digital transformation. It applies to any big sort of a transformation of digital for sure. And that's how it gets driven. And then you keep on monitoring the progress, your KPIs, your small time goals, big time goals, your processes through the data-driven, I'll say the informations which you keep on getting them. So you have to monitor it as per the timeline. That's where the leadership buy-in comes in.
Thank you, Jaydeep. I think I just picked up a small thing from you. You mentioned, how do we overcome resistance across, levels in the organization if there's a change that's happening in that sense, right? And kind of my next question goes into that, and I'd ask Rajib this question. If really have to make that change, somewhere it's not just the infrastructure, the processes that you bring in, which we are calling digital. It's also the mindset of the people across levels that needs to change. That they have to think digital first. What does that mean? Can we actually? How do we make sure that people change their thought process? I can easily get and sit and do an Excel file and work for 2 hours, but if I don't think, can I do this in a faster way within 30 minutes? That change will not happen. So, do you have some thoughts and views around how we could make that?
Yeah, thank you, Sojwal. Thank you, Jaydeep. Yeah, it's in continuity to whatever our Jaydeep has already deliberated. So, as you all we have experience as a leader, so any success mission, vision statement, whatever we have, it is the leader who are the torch bearers or the backbone of that mission, whatever we take. No doubt it's a teamwork, but the leader has to lead. In this particular case, for a digital first culture, a leader has to lead digitally from the top. So this transformation, digital transformation, is more of a behavioral than the technology. Technology is there, but the behavioral tendency of the team, the motivation, the accountability, everything has to be fixed to that. So if you see broadly, like what would be the aspect a leader can attribute it to the success of the mission, I would summarize it into 3 aspects. Basically, it has to champion the vision. He has to be champion of the vision. He has to drive deeply into the end business goal, which has to be deliberated amongst the team members. Then he has to be accountable for the resources, the time, the talent, the finance, so everything. So here it's a big role of the leader. And lastly, to conclude and to sustain it, it has to be the accountability. So it has to go with the performance of the employees, the team, so that they get aligned, and it's an accountability in terms of the KPIs, their annual performances, so which makes it successful. See, the leader's role here would be also, if you see the resistance which comes in any new technology, now, there he has a big role, so that across various stakeholders, across the global, where different global supply chains are involved, different statutory things are involved, different technologies are there. So here leader has to collaborate. So at the end, if you see, even we can refer the success stories of the 2 of the best global giants, like I would tell, like Microsoft or Google. See, all the success they have is that they have very focused way, imbibe the KPIs into digital behaviors. So the digital behaviors is being monitored. Even the leaders have the coaching behaviors on the digital. So this is something which really leads to sustaining of any mission. Here, I would also like to share my experience being in the oil and gas sector, and we are also equal partner of the government, a PSU, and also a private corporate. So here I'm seeing a real competition even in the government sector also. Somewhere we feel, maybe see, I am a part from the ArcelorMittal side and from the Hindustan Petroleum. But nowhere the PSUs are lagging behind, and they have also implemented AI, generative AI, e-procurement tool very aggressively. So it's a culture which is so fast picking up. So it's a transformational thing for all leaders in the supply chain. And like what we can tell here, who embraces it fast and who leads are in the race. So it's a mindset which has to change, and leaders here has to really relook into their working style and take along the team with this new technology and do it as fast and as aggressively as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajib. I think that kind of leads us to get into really the next part, which is how do we start getting humans involved into all of this digitalization, and where do they really play a role? I would like to then move on and ask my next question to Sachin. Sachin, what are the ways in which we can get this done? Is gamification, for example, a good way to begin? Are there upskilling programs that we need to do? Should we engage more? What type of people? Frontline people, back-end people? What do you have your views on this, please?
Very nice questions. The Jaydeep and Rajib has explained nicely about the things. Now I am taking further the same discussion at the next level. Like for example, gamification. Gamification is nothing but people in the down the line should feel that the process they are working like a game. Like for example, the answer is not a digital bag. The true engagement is steel plant or spiral mill point, from connecting or learning to clear purpose of peer collaboration. Like for example, steel and pipe mills, frontline deals with MES screen, quality data, SAP transaction, predictive maintenance dashboard, and safety systems. The mistake many companies make in generating e-learning instead, a macro gamification, aligned with daily work is so far more effective. Like in ELSA plant, I can give the example of a steel plant. We introduce a digital shift champion. Like operator earn points. Like correct SAP confirmation, first time right quality entry, using digital checklist instead of paper, or leaderboards were visible at shift change. The monthly reward were practical, skill allowances, preferred shift rotation, because instead of night shift, prefer what a particular shift. So our shift in charge preferred that particular shift, so that they can save their leaves. Then a certification sponsorship, not just cash, but the entire sponsorship. So the impact, if we see, the SAP transaction accuracy improved significantly. Resistance to MES system dropped drastically. Supervision visor begins coaching digitally instead of firefighting. Then when the blended with real-time performance data, this method has been dropped to cut onboarding times by 40% and boost the productivity of our day-to-day production by 12%. So gamification must reinforce discipline, data quality, productivity, not just a participation. But gamification drives adoption, certification, build depth and scalability. But last but not least, I can tell in a short, digital transformation succeed not when the system go live, but when the people trust, use and improve them every day.
Thank you. I think you briefly talked of digital learning as well as part of your response, and let me now move on to Rashmi. Rashmi, so learning, of course, right? In humans, if you want to really be good in technology, you start getting into the learning aspects of it. There are mentorship programs. There is potentially peer-to-peer learning. The learning can be in various forms, right? There could be also role rotations that we could do. How do we basically move from, one is that, the other is, how do you keep learning on the job? So how do you essentially move from a one-time learning to a continuous learning, more, and this is not just the standard learning, but, more focused on what you're talking of digitalization, and how do we make sure humans remain relevant in a digitized world? So your views on that, and Rashmi, once you're done, because this is such a wide aspect and wide role, it's also open for any one of you to give your remarks on this topic as well.
Sure. So thanks, Sojwal. This is a good question, and learning as a concept, if we talk about any industry, it can move from a basic one-day training to a continuous learning, and it becomes real only when it is integrated with how work is getting done on the ground. It is integrated with the strategy of the organization. It is supported by the digital platforms which all my co-panelists spoke about. It is reinforced by the leadership, and then it is measured as per the business outcomes, not through the training hours. Right now, if we talk about training, it is basically being measured in terms of how many training hours have been consumed. However, if we have to make it continuous, it should be part of the start of the year planning, where we integrate it with the strategy of the organization. And we say that, okay, this is the training that will help us to reach to the business growth and outcomes. I belong to healthcare, and I have a very live example to share when we actually got the experience of continuous learning. You all are aware of COVID, right? COVID was a time when the entire, healthcare supply chain became a platform of real-time learning. Procurement people, clinicians, operations people, they all came together. They were working day and night in control rooms on real-time data and focusing towards managing shortages of supplies and ensuring patient care is taken care of. That is what a real-time learning is. We were there on the floor day in, day out, managing emergencies and ensuring that patient who is there should get care. Patient should get oxygen. So this is how real-time learning works. Now to move forward, how we actually integrate it in today's system. So one, as he shared, leadership, it should flow from top to bottom. Mentorship is very important, irrespective of industry. If I am a leader, it becomes my responsibility that I mentor people in a way where they are able to integrate what they are learning on their job. It is important that at the start of the year, they understand that these are the skills that I have to develop over the period of time, over next 12 months, and then reach to a goal. And then that integrated plan should be implemented on ground. That is very important. Second thing is digital platforms, AI, which we talked about. So more digitization in supply chain, it will take us to more collaborative way of learning and growing forward in the world. And last but not least, peer-to-peer learning, fungibility. So for example, if I talk about supply chain as a concept, and I have been blessed to working in different industries in my entire career, what I feel is the fungibility is the most important factor. What is procurement? Procurement is basically if you have a little bit of common sense and you have a good integrity. I personally feel after 22 years, I can buy a needle and I can buy an aeroplane as well. So creating fungibility through training is very important. If in healthcare, there are different portfolios, one is drugs, one is consumables, one is capex investments, then is indirect procurement, then it becomes my responsibility that all my team members learn each portfolio over a period of time. They grow, their functional skill set grows, and that is being implemented also into day-to-day working. That is integrated in the outcomes of the organization, and it is measured in the KPIs of every individual. So that is how I feel that collaborative way of working through top to bottom and ensuring that all the people learn and grow is very important. And training is not restricted only in the rooms. Training is integrated with the strategy of the organization, and the employee to the last level in the organization should understand that how he or she is contributing to the overall organization goals. So that's how I would define it. I would request if anyone wants to add something to this, it will be great.
While you add, I just wanted to make a remark here. It's a good point you brought about COVID being a very good learning platform for everybody in healthcare, whether it's doctors, whether it's patients, whether it's clinicians, whether it is administrators, whether it's the purchasing supply chain colleagues there. Everything was new. Everything was being understood what's happening. I also come from healthcare, so I've lived it and I've experienced it. But what I also felt is COVID was also a learning for everybody, specifically, also the larger people over here. We started looking at hygiene, personal hygiene more seriously. We started, looking at how we could, manage, remote management of business. That became a new learning. Within procurement supply chain, we had a lot of learnings as well. We realized that suppliers whom we have been treating all along as preferred suppliers, strategic suppliers, you suddenly need somebody whom you've never dealt with for a few years, but then you need that person now to be your supplier. So that person becomes your strategic supplier. So it kind of goes away from the standard, risk mitigation exercise that we normally do in procurement. But those are things that actually, came up very strongly, that this is, so then you learn, you adapt and you move on, incorporating that as part of your larger supply chain and procurement strategy. So that's the other comment I just had in addition to what you had to say. And over to you, Jaydeep.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just touch upon the thing which Rashmi has said in terms of, training piece and the peer-to-peer learning and that thing. So, in digitization, if you see, there's a thought process that you need to get resources from outside the market, some very specific, very skilled, I'll say functionally very strong and different people. It is not always true. When we talk about very very skilled, very specific, functionally strong, we talk about the data scientist on role, which is fine. But when you drive the function, finally, when you work in procurement, when you work in distribution, when your digitization slowly takes place, these people, the data scientists and all, they are continuously working along with you. It's like a project. You have got a functional team. You have got a team who develops the programs. There's a functional team which tells you what to do. The business out. That's the way you achieve a business outcome. So one is role changes, which is very common today. Also, we speak there should be a role change among people to learn more and grow more. So when you peer-to-peer learning, also in digitization, your roles should change after a point of time. You cannot get every resource from outside. A logistics specialist guy with an excellent digitization exposure and all, which we keep on. We see all sorts of ads. We require these sort of people. But the whole point is these people get produced in the organization itself. While managing that change with the journey of the digitization, and then they start becoming those experts with those experiences. They come across, I'll say, different types of scenarios and keep on growing themselves. So these people has to come inside from the functions and go across the functions and get exposed to them to learn. That's what you can say peer to peer. You can also say role changes, but this is very, very important. Typical key resources which I mentioned, like data scientists, is just an example. Of course, you might have to take it from outside, which is not readily available. But other places, your internal people, you have to relook to make the right talent by one, exclusively external training. In few cases it is required. Rest is you will have to go through the on the job role changes and everything. That's how you grow. You make a strong workforce, and everybody is capable to drive that piece. In terms of it's not a very big demand, the digital part of it. But when the change is embraced, people can drive it. But you need to make people move around to get an exposure across the system. It integrates your system. People doesn't work in silos, and they start believing the system. This is very, very important. So that's a key point I thought probably I should be talking about.
Did you even have?
Certification and partnership in technical education is also very important. For pipe industry, we can turn the operator. We cannot turn the operator into data scientist, but must make them digitally fluent. A mill worker cannot practice operating at new CNC plasma machine, but in a risk-free environmental before touching the actual machine. Then for pipe plant, we partner with the PDTech platform to offer modular certification in SAP MM or SAP PP model. Basic data analytics for quality and maintenance team. The digital maintenance and condition monitoring for mechanical staff. Courses were different for the pipe industry. We can track the pipe tracking, heat wave, yield loss, pipe defect analysis. For pipe fitters, digital match to robotic welding operation from industry recognized partner is portable, trusted, and credentialed that validate the new hybrid skills.
Yeah, I think I'm also seeing the timer. We've come to the close of our timing. I'd like to make a few notes I've made as we've been talking, and you've been sharing your your thoughts here. We did talk about digital adoption. When it is top down from a leadership standpoint, what's important is communication. Why are we doing it? What is the benefit to the organization? We talked of commitment not just from the top in this fashion, but also, and this is not necessarily funding related commitment. It's also about intent related communication. But we also need to overcome resistance from the bottom in terms of change. And there are a lot of internal and external stakeholders that we need to make sure we involve ourselves with. And this is important because the landscape is constantly changing. I think that's what we were talking about, and that was important and necessary. When we talked of digital first thought process, we said it is not just behavior, it's also a motivation that's required. It's also an accountability that needs to be there from every person involved. We probably need to make sure it becomes a part of the performance measurement of the metrics, not necessarily in terms of KPIs written down in the document, but KPI type of a approach to making it work. I think that's what Rajib you were mentioning. It's about imbibing that behavior in yourself as you deal with day-to-day operations. And thirdly, I think you also talked about how transformation is important. And everybody in your own mind should become a leader of transformation. You need not really do it just because someone is asking you to do it. It need not be a herd mentality. It has to be coming in from within. And when you do the transformation from within, that's when the change happens. The digital first thought process, that's what we talked about. when we looked at how can we start getting it into the, leveraging the human empathy, the human ethos, we said we could potentially get into gamification, we could get into digital learning, we could make sure we have things like digital shift champions that you mentioned about Sachin. And I think those are the things that can help us start getting that in. And finally, when we looked at how can we make sure this is a continuous learning and not necessarily a one-off that's limited to the training room. We talked of, I think COVID was a really good example that you gave. But in addition to that, we said there could be a fungibility of roles. So there's no really one dependency on a person. It all runs process-wise. If someone is not there, someone else gets and does it. The other person also gets a chance to get into that, learn into it. We talked of job rotations, short-term, longer-term job rotations, so that everyone goes into it. There are no silos that are created. And we also talked about, hybrid ways of working. We talked of digital fluency being incorporated. So these are elements, I think, that I have summarized. I hope I've covered everything that you people did talk about. In my view, as we come to the close, and before we open up for thoughts or questions from anyone, I think this is more, when we look at digitalization of supply chain, this is not really something that we need to run just because the algorithm is asking you to do it. So in that sense, this is not automation at all. This is more like an augmentation. You really add on to what your tools are giving you. Your tools are making you faster. They are making you better on repetitive jobs. They are making you more agile. But can you use that speed and agility to give in the additional insight that only a human can bring in? That's something. So that's the augmentation part, and we will keep on evolving to augment the machines better as they learn from us. And therefore, in my view, or in our view, collective view, I would say the human edge will always be a differentiator in everything that we do, and we will make the machines work the way they are required to be worked. So it's not necessarily a nice to have. From that standpoint, I think it is a must have. So that's really what we have for you today. With that, if there are any questions, comments, we are happy to answer. Yes, sir. Yeah, you can have this.
It's general, I think anyone can answer. So hi, good afternoon. My name is Surajit Sarkar. So the question, when you're talking about the human age, the biggest involvement of the human age, if you look at today in the supply chain, they are the truck drivers. Okay, now, how do we incline them to the supply chain, when you're talking about so many things? Because they still feel that they are driven in the supply chain, they are not the contributor.
Okay, okay, I'm putting the digitization part of it apart because this is a different question. How, if I understand your question correctly, you are saying that truck drivers today still feel they are left out of the system. They are being exploited to the extent possible, and how do they feel a part of the supply chain where they are also being looked into in a partner proper manner, right? So see, I'll tell you, this exists across organizations in India in terms of it, which you are right in saying that. And I'll say that there has been a very slow and gradual change. I can give you a couple of examples. It's very slow and gradual, and it will be gradual. It will be gradual. This is a paradigm shift for our organizations to take. It's a mindset shift for the organization firstly. But if you see things like inside the factories, the things like proper, I'd say driver restrooms, the sanitations, and in terms of facilities, proper food canteen facilities for drivers, like Tata Motors, if you talk about, they have done these things. people are following suit. Organizations like ours is also, we have not implemented as you are right, but we definitely would be following suit. We have been discussing very strongly about this because this is a sector neglected, or I will say taken for granted, right? So I think this is the things that the organizations are doing. It will be a slow change. But if you also see the government who is now as per the logistics policy and all, that's again of course will be a slow change. We all know it was the most unorganized sector. But the logistics parks and whichever are coming up now, if anybody have seen, they are coming up with a lot of facilities, even sleeping facilities for the drivers, right? They are coming up today. Okay. So with these changes, I mean, taken up by the government and the organizations realizing it, but we are definitely late to act upon it. But the intent is there and people are acting upon it. This will be slow and gradual process to change because we are used to that way. And that is the way we run our businesses. And that has been the way. I will not say it's the very right way, but there is a hope for change because the organization as well as the government has been realizing this fact. Some of the truck companies I know, I have been working with a couple of them who works for me rather, a couple of good initiatives they have taken in terms of putting on the ADAS systems and all in the trucks, in all of their trucks, so and educating them in terms of the accidents and the dangerous drivings. If they are drooling in the evening because of tiredness, the alerts come in and they're asked to stop. All those are for there. So they have understood this is for not for monitoring them. This is for monitoring them, but this is basically for they have understood later on for their safety. These sort of things. Even the transporters have started taking up. So that's all my answer is. It's going to be very, very gradual in India, but we have seen people, I mean organizations and governments at least realizing this issue and taking steps towards it. Anybody who wants to answer?
Does that answer your question, sir? Okay, it's flashing times up for us, and they also eventually gave us a buzzer. But if there's one last question, if there's any comment, otherwise we can move on. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much to my co-panelists for having spent this time and your thoughts around this topic. And thank you everyone for being a patient audience.